There are enough attacks on the quote-unquote fake press nowadays. We need to be supportive of those who do us a good job in calling. So now I'm going to start introducing this fellow. It's a pretty obvious guy. I mean, he is not the smallest man in the world. So, Gene, can you start working your way up here? Dr. Gene Nichol started his career, yes, as a football player. He is a legal scholar. He was dean of the law school, Chapel Hill. He is one of the finest critics of Republicans that we have in this country. He has researched and done work on poverty in North Carolina. He knows the failings of the state legislature since 2011, inside and out. And he's probably most up to date on what happened yesterday, too. So, Jane, I will hand it over to you. Welcome back.
Thank you, Jeff. It's good to be here. See this beautiful crowd this time of morning. It is not my first time in this room. I come back because I go to a lot of Democratic places, and it won't shock you to learn that you guys have the best food of any Democratic organization in North Carolina. So, I don't know who did those deviled eggs, but I'd like to work for you part-time. I've been in this room a number of times. I sort of love these kind of rooms all across North Carolina. They get a little warm, they get a little crowded. Sometimes you can't hear exactly as well as you wish, but that's kind of what it means to be a Democrat. We sing songs, we do the Pledge of Allegiance. I've never gone to a Republican gathering like this, but I'm assuming they don't do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore, since they sort of struck out that liberty and justice for all notion. We get to say the whole thing. I love singing "This Land Is Your Land." If Pete Seeger was still alive, he would chastise us for not singing the additional verse, which talks about seeing the sign that said no trespassing, but on the other side it didn't say nothing, and that side was made for you and me. I was thinking about one of the first times I came to Salisbury to speak. It was a long time ago now, back during the Moral Monday stuff. There was a Moral Monday gathering at one of the churches here. I was supposed to say something. The traffic was worse than I had anticipated out on 40, so it was getting close to being late for the witching hour, and I was lost. I couldn't find the church. I got desperate. There was a policeman, Rowan County cop, parked along the side of the road. So I decided, this is a story about not judging books by the cover. I pulled over and asked him to get out of the car. I wanted to see if he could tell me where the church was. He got out, took off his hat. And he was a big guy. He had a flat top, sort of looking like you might think such a fellow would look. I told him, I can't find this church. Do you know where it is? And he said, well, of course I know where it is. I live here. And then he said, are you planning on going to that Moral Monday thing? And I thought, oh, shit. I swallowed hard and said, yes, I was. And he said, well, it's kind of hard to find. I want you to get in your car, get behind me. I'll drive you over there. We'll be there in just 3 minutes. So I said, Jesus, that wasn't what I expected. So you never know. You never judge a book by its cover. I sort of changed my mind what I'm going to talk about this morning. The world is moving fast. I have written a speech, and you're probably glad to hear I'm not going to give it. I was going to talk to you about something that is actually very important in North Carolina, and that is the intense, extreme, illegitimate, illegal politicization of the North Carolina Supreme Court. The harm that they are doing to democracy in North Carolina. It is more dramatic, more stunning, more horrifying than I think most North Carolinians know. Our North Carolina Supreme Court has become the most intensely partisan Supreme Court in the United States. It is a corrupt court, literally corrupt. Now, I know that alarms people when you say it. Maybe if I changed it just a little bit to say that it is politically corrupt, that is, they decide cases in favor of Republicans without legal justification and debilitate Democrats. Some people might say, well, that's not really corruption. That's political corruption. That is corrupt as hell. It is violating the oath of office to the North Carolina Constitution, to the United States Constitution. And I know a lot of you worked to try and secure Allison Riggs' seat on the Supreme Court. One thing you might have noticed when she got sworn in after all these months, she took an oath of office not only to the North Carolina Constitution and the United States Constitution, but to assure that she exercises her judicial power without favor to any person. I'm not going to talk about the North Carolina Supreme Court, but if I was, I would tell you that I don't believe any informed person, I don't believe any lawyer, any judge in North Carolina believes that 4 of the Republican members of our North Carolina Supreme Court decide cases without favor to Republicans. They do. It's corrupt, it is dramatic, and it now has moved into a new framework of directly trying to affect the outcome of elections in the state of North Carolina. This notion that they just tried to do, they got overturned by a federal judge, but they used every bit of their effort to steal that Supreme Court seat and to take it away from Allison Riggs and all those of you who worked so hard for her election. They shamefully attempted to steal it. They didn't make a mistake. They weren't misinterpreting North Carolina law. The principles were straightforward, as the federal judge said. You don't set a new set of rules after the election is over and then just to apply them to some counties and not to others. Everyone knows that. They knew that. That's all I'm trying to suggest. They intentionally abused their power to try and further their political prospects. They are a great impediment to democracy in North Carolina as we speak. They ought to resign. And if they don't resign, God knows we need to beat them at the ballot box quickly as we can. But I was thinking about Los Angeles and thinking about Senator Padilla and thinking about Trump and his parade and his disgusting behavior at Fort Bragg just a few days ago. And I decided that much as I'd like to talk to you about the North Carolina Supreme Court, at least one of my law students was here. She might have not been bored to death by it. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk to you about something which is closer to the moment. Something you have on your mind, you're going to have on your mind this afternoon. I'm going to be running back to Raleigh myself, joining you in one of these demonstrations across the state. So I'm not going to talk about the North Carolina Supreme Court. I'm maybe not even going to talk as long as you might think I will, even though I've been winding up here for a long time. But I'm going to talk about this moment. No king. No George III. No limitless government power. No tyranny. As the Declaration itself says, it is our duty to throw off government of absolute despotism, the government that Donald Trump lusts for, and that his Republican accomplices seek to aid and abet. No absolute despotism, no criminal syndicate crushing the American promise to further the personal interests of a singularly corrupt, singularly criminal American politician. We believe here in this room still in a government of laws, not me. In a government only through the consent of the governed, government of, by, and for the people. So we part company with Donald Trump and we resist. Not since our founding has any human being posed such a threat to American democracy as that lodged by Donald Trump this very minute. Nowhere, no time. It would be a life's work to even attempt to rank his transgressions. He instigated a violent coup against the lawful government of the nation. He issued pardons to 1,500 convicts who followed his brutal call, showing his embrace of murderous, seditious insurrection, so long as it is carried out on his behalf. He then executed a purge of the Justice Department and the officials who had successfully prosecuted his fellow coup participants. He told us that the members of the Congressional January 6th Committee who investigated his outrages should be imprisoned. He demanded on tape, like a mafia thug, that Georgia's Secretary of State steal 11,000 votes to fraudulently overturn the 2020 election. He then required that an entire national political party avow in obvious and undeniable falsity that the 2020 presidential election was stolen. And even worse, the Republican Party agreed in humiliating and disqualifying submission. On the first day of his second term, Trump issued an executive order attempting to override the 14th Amendment. The next day, he unleashed the richest man in the world, utterly without authority, without legality, without accountability, to single-handedly dismantle much of the federal government, sacrificing particularly the lives and the plight of the very poorest people on the face of the earth. And then they gloated, celebrating over the suffering and the deaths. He threatened to invade Greenland, Panama, Mexico, and Canada like a mad 18th century imperialist monarch. His vile Secretary of Defense reiterated the threat to Greenland only 2 days ago. He has made our nation embrace the theory so detested by the ancient Greeks and the framers of the Constitution, that is the theory that the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. Literally nothing could be more un-American. He has made us an anathema to democracies and a friend to tyrants across the globe. We have shown our allies no commitment to honor, to obligation of decency, none of the courage that defines our national character. He has no informed understanding of what America is. His administration has violated the Constitution with impunity and refused to follow the orders of the United States Supreme Court. He has instituted a police state where residents are seized on the streets, in their homes, in their places of work, their schools, their churches, without a shred of due process, and then are summarily shipped to foreign lands, never to be heard from again. The disappeared, casting a pall of fear across this land that is foreign to Americans, using violence and menace to try to intimidate senators, congressmen, and judges, so as to say, bow down before me. I demand it. If you don't, I'm going to make things even worse for you. He has deployed the military in cities of the United States as if it were his personal strike force. He has openly created a regime of corruption never even approached in this country, even in our darkest of times. And he governs through a reign of terror and literal extortion that demands control of every component of American life: the press, the universities, law firms, corporations, nonprofits, local and state governments, private foundations. Nothing he believes should be beyond his control. And none of that is to mention his 34 felonies and his verdict of sexual assault. No one has a record to match this in American history. Aaron Burr, Jefferson Davis, Nathan Bedford Forrest were many things, but none was the President of the United States. Donald Trump is a clear and present danger to American democracy. As are all his Republican henchmen, lickspittle in Raleigh, in Washington, in what has now become the massive American Sedition Caucus. So this is what we face. What we never thought we would face, but we do. We undoubtedly do. It does us no service to ignore it, to refuse to name our massive and imminent peril. In 1861, Ulysses S. Grant said this: "Whatever may have been my political opinions before, I have but one sentiment now, that we have a government of laws and that must be sustained. There are but two parties now," he said, "traitors and patriots. And I want hereafter to be ranked with the latter. Traitors or patriots, one or the other. That's it. I'm honored to be here, in the company of patriots. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions. If you'd like to address them, please. Can you repeat that? Do you have any questions for Dr. Nichol? Good.
As a veteran, I've got two things to say. Number one is I never thought I'd see the day that we'd have a military parade for a man that didn't have the courage The second thing I've got to say is I'm really frustrated. We are now the most partisan gerrymandered state in the country. We got a state Supreme Court that's a joke. And I've been in Senator Ford's office twice in the last year talking about partisan gerrymandering. And a man who feels qualified to lead the congregation in prayer can look me right in the eye and say, there's nothing wrong with our maps. So I don't know what we do when, if this is a poker game, the deck is stacked.
Right. Great questions, both, or great comments. And I particularly appreciate the second because that's the topic I was going to talk to you about, but decided not to. So it's a little bit of an opening. It's not surprising that a Republican would say there's nothing wrong with those maps. They're exactly what we want. They rigged the election. We're out to rig the election. They steal the election. We're out to steal the election. So we got no objection. Now, you know what the history is here. We changed the membership of the state Supreme Court. Within weeks of them assuming office, they ordered rehearing in a case concerning the extreme partisan gerrymandering in a use of rehearing that had never occurred in 200 years of North Carolina jurisprudence. They then decided, contrary to what the Supreme Court had held before, that extreme partisan gerrymandering is just a wonderful thing in North Carolina. We warm to it. We think it's terrific. Boys will be boys and politicians will steal elections. The literal interpretation they gave us is that North Carolina's requirement of free elections does not mean free and fair elections. A rigged election is a free election, is a constitutional election. So when you said the deck is stacked as it is, and I'll talk to you about that in just a second, they said it's just fine to stack the deck in North Carolina. And if you want to know why, well, Paul Newby says, I looked at something that happened in merry old England in 1612 or something, and it convinced me that you can rig elections in North Carolina if you are a Republican. Anyone who thinks they would be allowing the rigging of elections for Democrats is howling at the moon, as we used to say. Now, we know we live with the results of this. We were thrilled in some ways with much of the election last time because in the major statewide offices, as you know, Democrats prevailed. Why did they prevail? Because you can't gerrymander a statewide office. There's just one district. Cheating the shape of the office doesn't work unless you want to try and take in part of South Carolina and Tennessee, maybe, which even there, not after. So in all the most important statewide races, which can't be gerrymandered, Democrats win. But with the General Assembly seats, the state legislative seats, and the congressional delegation, massive gerrymandering steals the day. It overcomes the votes. We decide who votes, we vote, in other words, they decide who gets the seats, not based on the votes. Now, as you know, in the General Assembly, the Republicans have huge margins, about 2/3 or even a little more in one house or the other. They do that even though, let this sink in for a little while. In 2024, more people voted for Democrats to represent them in the General Assembly than voted for Republicans. That's how stout the cheating is. You get more votes, but we get not just more seats, we get 2/3 of the seats. And that thumb on the scale defeats democracy in North Carolina. They know it, and we have to defeat it ourselves. We need, I've been working on a project on this. Democrats need to state and to act on their undying opposition to this gerrymandering. We need to support a statute, first of all, which says there shall be no political gerrymandering in North Carolina. That's illegal. Well, even Paul Newby can come up with a rule which says you have to cheat in favor of Republicans. And then, of course, as Democrats, we need to be straightforward and say we demand an independent redistricting commission so that this notion of deciding your own seats, the conflict of interest, which is attached to that, we just have to put a stop to. Now, that's going to require a hell of an effort on our part. They have a great history of cheating. They're expanding the cheating now, as you know, into separation of powers questions, where they're going to say, well, I know you got elected governor, but I'm going to take all your powers and give them to the auditor, or I'm going to make the highway patrol answerable to the librarian, as if we weren't actually voting for anything when we voted for governor. And that's unconstitutional as it can be. No state in America has the auditor running the election board. Even if you've been there 25 years, you've never seen that, right? But we also have, and this is what's important to recognize, we have the only court in the United States which would say that's okay. Because whatever else you want to do, Bill Berger, is just fine with me. I'm not actually a judge. I'm a partisan hack. I am the 4 members of the North Carolina Supreme Court are simply members of a Republican caucus. They are not judges. They should not be allowed to wear robes and whatever else. Nobody who voted to take this election away from Allison Riggs and give it to this guy wearing his Confederate outfit. No one who cast that vote should ever again be elected to the North Carolina Supreme Court. We've got to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, I'm with you.
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to have you discuss the big, horrible, destroy democracy and make Donald Trump dictator bill that he calls the big, beautiful, and we call the big, horrible.
Yeah.
I'm specifically concerned about the requirement to have bonds to challenge his decisions and the rule preventing states from regulating AI, which are designed to prevent democracy.
Yeah.
And we need as a group here to understand how horrible those two provisions really are.
Yeah. Well, there's even more in that big, horrifying bill that stuns the conscience, it seems to me. Here's what I would start with. We don't like to talk about this, but the United States is the most unequal nation in the world. The most economically unequal nation in the world. Thomas Piketty has said it's the most unequal nation in human history. All right? And if you look at economic inequality in the United States the last 40 years, the wealthy just keep getting wealthier. The middle class and working folks just continually have a smaller cut of the pie. So what do these characters do? What does Donald Trump do and his lackey, Michael, whatever it is, the Speaker of the House? They decide, well, when I look at this, when I look at the fact that we're the most unequal nation in human history, I say we've got a real clear obligation to make it worse. So let's have a law that delivers all of its benefits to the very wealthiest Americans, and that means for those in the bottom half economically, it's going to cost money. So huge dividends to the very wealthiest Americans. People in the bottom quarter, in the bottom half, are going to lose money under this big bill. When you put together the Medicaid cuts, the food assistance cuts, and the like. So we are taking a potently unequal society and saying, you know, this isn't quite good enough. Us Republicans, we got to learn to step on the necks of poor people just a little bit harder, goddammit. We got to do a little bit more. And so this bill does it, and it does it in astonishing ways. It is a cruel and anti-egalitarian effort. And I'm not surprised they're doing it. You know, if you study the North Carolina legislature, you study the Republican Party in Washington, D.C., they have one constant theoretical principle. That is, take things away from poor people and give them to rich people who already have the biggest share of any country in human history. What's the main thing we do? The exclusive thing we do? We take things from middle income people, low income people, and we give them to the very wealthiest among us. This statute, if it becomes a statute, is one of the great ventures of all time in that effort. Even some Republicans, Josh Hawley, if you can imagine, horrifying person that he is, says, you know, this is nothing but reverse Robin Hood. We are taxing low-income people to give money to the wealthiest people on the face of the earth. It is a moral outrage. So, yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for coming. I would love to hear a lot more about the project that you alluded to about working towards an independent commission overseeing gerrymandering, and what is anything that we could do to support that effort now, or how far off is that from when it will?
Well, it's there's been a statute introduced by Democrats, of course, Marcia Maury, Pricey, Harrison, to create an independent redistricting law. It was dispatched quickly to the Rules Committee and not seen of again. Now, one of the ironies, when you study this a little bit, I don't know what it was, 10, 12 years ago, Phil Berger, Tom Tillis, they supported independent redistricting. And to be honest, we were blocking it. Now they've got their mitts on all the power and they won't even consider it. But the first thing we got to do is win at least one of those houses. And with at least one of those houses, it changes the calculation for the future about whether you can just assume that you're going to be able to cheat. Thank you. Their principal agenda at this point, the main procedural value to be pursued by Republicans is cheating in the electoral process. And they are tied to it. But this, no matter what you feel about it, North Carolinians have to defeat extreme partisan gerrymandering or we lose our democracy. So I'm sure the people who stormed those beaches at Normandy would rather have been doing something else. And they couldn't be sure that they were going to win. But this is our job, just like they saw it as theirs. Yes, sir.
How concerned are you that this aesthetic of political power is being normalized more in our country? And how can, what do you think? Can we effectively fight Pharaoh's economy?
Well, it's a great question, and it's it's answering it is one way of saying it's why I chose to talk today about what I talked about instead of having written out a speech. Let me tell you this: the number of times in my life I've written out a speech and didn't give it a very, very small. So this is the great challenge that we face, whether we wish we could face it or not. And it's not just cheating in the democratic process. It's, as you say, this horrifying set of values that they are trying to cast upon us to make us live under. Now, to be honest, I'm not certain if we can beat this or not. I believe we can. I think there's some reasons to be hopeful. And I'll mention a couple of those in just a second. But I will say this, having struggled on this question myself for 15 years, whether we can beat it or not, I know what our job is. We are Americans. We are Tar Heels. We are not destined to surrender democracy without a goddamn fight. Now, I've been thinking about this some, and let me just tell you a few bases for optimism. One, I just mentioned, winning these statewide races. That is not small potatoes, and it shows that there's still a lot of blood pumping in the Democratic veins. Second, this is more complicated, but think about this. I study these Republicans some. Right out the door, when the question is, are we going to cozy up to our friend Donald Trump? And all of these cases will eventually go to a court that has proven how lawless it is. So they might give us some help, and there are fortunately good federal district judge and court of appeals judges of both political parties who still act like judges when the cases come before them. But they're all going to be reviewed by the United States Supreme Court, which is Donald Trump's best friend. So, Bruce Springsteen sort of said it when he was jumping on Trump the other day. When all the guardrails are gone, all that's left is you and me. And maybe that's the way it ought to be. At least that's the way it is. And no one's going to bail us out. It's great to see you guys. Keep up the good work.
It is up to us, and the next thing on our agenda is from 3 to 5 this afternoon, the No Kings demonstration on East Innis from 3 to 5, the 200 block of East Innis. That is the next step. And we are doing that together with all the progressive folk here in Salisbury, Rowan County. And yes, they're disaffected Republicans that show up at that kind of event as well. So I hope to see you then. If you don't have a sign, you can stick around here afterwards. We have the poster board here, and we can make more signs. We have additional signs in case somebody shows up without one. And we're going to be there. We're going to be the people saying no to all this kind of crap. It's time to flush it. Okay? We'll see you this afternoon. Pardon?
You want to save that sheet with the song on it?
Whatever you want to leave on the tables, leave. We'll pick it up. See you next month, but this afternoon, definitely, 3 to 5, East Innis.
Very good speaker.
And they have made lying the center part of their political strategy. Now, why do they do that? And why would I mention that as a potential positive? Well, think about this. I think our clamping down on democracy by Bill Berger and his fellows is somewhat different than Trump's. Trump's is overtly and directly rooted in hatred and malice and all the worst instincts of the American people, all the worst practices of our history. Now, that may be true of our folk too, but this is what I'm getting at. They don't think they can say that in North Carolina. You know, we had that horrible person running for governor, and they just figured out, well, no, you can't talk that kind of shit and have any thought of getting elected. It's like this a little bit. North Carolinians are, I travel the state a lot, they are immensely committed to public education. It's part of our DNA. We believe North Carolina has become a more accomplished state because of public education. We're not just like the rest of the South on that front. Now, there's no doubt about this. These Republicans for 15 years have had a massive campaign to destroy public education in North Carolina. No one could doubt that. But ask yourself this. Do you ever hear them say, oh, I'm out to destroy public education in North Carolina? No, every time the election comes around, they start talking about how much they love teachers and they're going to give you, just another 15 cents of a raise. And oh, God, do they love public education. They've got to lie about what their agenda is. The same way that since all they actually are concerned about substantively is feathering the nest of the richest 2%, they don't say that either. You never hear them say, come on, vote for me. Let's have a big turnout because I'm going to pass some statutes which only give money to the top 1%. Come on, let's all get together and see, can't we pull this off? It doesn't work. You can't do that in a democracy. The sort of great span of their issues, they have to lie about what's actually occurring. Now, you can say, okay, well, what are you saying about that? Well, I'm saying it's a little bit of a backhanded compliment to us in North Carolina, isn't it? I think they are saying, or they're recognizing, well, you can't just run on hatefulness here. You might be able to do that in Texas, where I'm from, or in Florida, but you can't do that here. It's not going to work. Well, I think that means there's a good future for truth telling by a Democrat in North Carolina. And we've got to be stout about it. We got to learn, like Frederick Douglass taught us, that sometimes it's not just the light that is needed, but the thunder, the fire. And I think there's a good future in that. Now, last, well, I could give you a couple more, but I think the Republicans, even with their lies, have now overplayed their hand. No one has a lower opinion of the North Carolina Supreme Court in America than I did. But even I was surprised that they would reach in the direct light of day and try to steal a Supreme Court election. It's just so far outside the norm of American behavior. I just wouldn't have thought anybody would do that. But they looked at Cole in the eye. They even had one of their courageous colleagues say, you can't do this. There's no law for this. And they did it. And one of the things that happened, this from this county, people all over North Carolina just went batshit about it. You can't steal our elections. You can't say to 65,000 people, your votes are not going to count. We're not going to put up with that crap. And I think they overplayed their hand. And I think I was in a lot of those demonstrations. They weren't all just the regular characters. Some of them were Republicans. Lots of them were veterans. What the hell are you doing trying to take away veterans' votes? And I think, so in my view, with this Jefferson, what's his name, race, they came out of the closet a little bit. Yeah, we're all signed up for tyranny. We don't believe in democracy. I don't know what we teach our little kids when they're coming up. I don't let them say the Pledge of Allegiance anymore because it's an anathema to me. They're out of the closet. In the same way that saying, okay, Josh, you got elected governor, but we're going to take away all your powers. We're going to, I don't know what we're going to do next time. That we're going to say that the postmaster from Rowan County's got to deliver the State of the State address. Because there is nothing we won't do to cheat. Now, I was mentioning this, no other state in the country has ever said their auditor runs the elections. And no other state Supreme Court in the country would say that's okay, but ours does. Well, part of what I'm trying to suggest on the optimism side, lots of people now, regular people said, God, this is what we're up against. I didn't want to assume, just because people like Nichol said it, that these people are trying to end our democracy. But by God, they are. Right in my face. They're walking right up to me and want to take my vote away. As if this was what? Russia. I won't have it. And that makes me feel better about the next ballot. But it is the fight of our lives. I've got no doubt about that. Let's say one more.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Talk about this terrible bill, the provision in the terrible bill that makes it impossible to challenge Trump's orders, where they're trying to put a bond to do that and regulate AI in such a way as they can in the future stuff things down our throat.
Yes.
Remember, that provision is part of this big bill, and if it's passed,
right,
then all challenges to Trump's orders become meaningless because they can't make the bonds that they're requiring.
Well, and they want to reduce the power of federal courts to issue such orders in the first place.
Please explain that fully, because we have 90 people here. They can get on the phone or write letters, and they could be effective to even somebody like Tillum. I give up on Burr.
Yeah. I'll let you write the orders about AI and write the letters, but I will say this. In my line of work, I have to study these executive orders that Trump has issued since he came into play in 20th of January. They are almost uniformly illegal, unconstitutional, and represent a power grab that we have never seen in the United States. No one ever thought to try and, in essence, blackmail the whole country by saying, I've got you by the nape of the neck, and you're going to have to put up with anything that you want. Next step, part of this law, is to make it, they're going to attack the courts and try and make them unable to issue those sorts of decrees. That's not a great surprise that that's what they would do. We could have some hope for the courts, but courts have stood up some. But when you look around this room, this is what we rely on, you folks. Because you got to remember this. We got one United States Supreme Court. Ultimately, all these actions of these federal judges are going to be appealed to the United States Supreme Court. There's been no greater aider and abetter of Donald Trump than John Roberts and the United States Supreme Court.
Yes.
If you had the unfortunate history I have, which means you have been reading Supreme Court opinions for the last 50 years, you would say that the Trump opinion is perhaps the most astonishing. No law, no text, no history. The framers were dead against this result of president being above the law. No president ever thought he was above the law. And these people say they're interested in original intent in history, but that flies